make you host.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, why can't I make you host? Okay, I think I need to gallery view. I think now I can make you host. Host. Make host. You
Okay.
are now host of your own shiur. Isn't that nice?
Okay.
Okay.
I
Kol
feel it.
Tuv,
Yeah,
all the
I
best.
feel empowered.
Enjoy.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Welcome all to the shiur. We're ready and set up to go. The topic which I want to speak about today has to do with the bracha shehechiyanu on seasonal fruits or vegetables. We'll see those halachas in a moment. But before I come to that topic, let me ask you if you have any questions, halacha questions that you wish to deal with now. Uh, yes.
So actually, I had more than one question. First of all, what is a new fruit? The fruit that is new on the market, or the fruit that is new to me that I haven't had it yet? Like a dried mango suddenly arrived from last year, but I didn't eat it yet this year. Is it new or not new?
Okay. Well, hold on, and we're going to see some sources in a few minutes, which will deal with exactly that question. We're going to come to that later today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for now before we get started? I'll get the stuff on the screen. Okay. Now we begin with the basic halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, and I think you'll find the basic halacha somewhat surprising because well here goes. This is the Shulchan Aruch. Haroeh, when you see pri chadash, when you see a new fruit, just setting eyes on it, when you see a new fruit, mitchadesh mishana l'shana, which is seasonal and comes, there's a yearly season. When the fruit becomes available, when you see it, you could be walking by a tree and you see it on the tree. You could be walking through the market and you see it in the market. When you see the new fruit, mivarech shehechiyanu, you make the bracha shehechiyanu imanu v'higiyanu l'zman hazeh. Va'afilu ro'ehu biyad chavero, even if you see it in someone else's hand, it's not yours. Someone else is going to eat it because someone else has it. But just seeing it, whether it's in the market or, as the Shulchan Aruch says, on the tree, it doesn't matter. Seeing the new fruit, which is seasonal, gets a bracha. But then the Shulchan Aruch says, Nahagu, nonetheless, the minhag, the common practice, is shelo levarech ad shas achila, not to make the bracha until you're actually going to eat it. Now here we have a little bit of tension between what the Shulchan Aruch thinks we should be doing and what the Shulchan Aruch says we are doing. Um, well, bottom line, of course, what you should do, what I should do, what we should do is the minhag hapashut, the basic widespread practice which the Shulchan Aruch mentions, namely wait until you're going to eat the fruit. Now, if you encounter someone out there who is making the bracha just walking through the shuk, if you encounter someone out there who is making the bracha just walking by a tree and making the bracha, well, you can smile. You can smile at that person. There's surely no violation of using God's name in vain in doing that. After all, is the basic halacha. But if you want good advice, the advice of the Shulchan Aruch is to wait until you eat it. Now, the question obviously is why? Why does the Shulchan Aruch recommend that we ignore the basic halacha and follow this common minhag? Well, we'll come into an explanation. We'll understand this in a moment. The Ramah adds, Misha berach b'shas re'il lo hifsi, anyone who makes the bracha when you see it has lost nothing. That is, you get all the merit and all the good things that you get from a bracha. You get if you make the bracha upon seeing the fruit, that's fine. Ein levarech ad shenigmar tashlum gidulo apri. But in any event, if you're going to make the bracha when you see it on a tree, you have to wait until the tree is ripe. Um, you have to wait until the fruit is ripe. Just because the grapes are beginning to grow, just because the apples are beginning to grow. No, no, when you see them in the early stages, one does not make the bracha. You wait until they are ripe. Ve'im lo berech b'riyah rishona, yachol levarech b'riyah shniyah. Since it's okay to make the bracha when you see it, well, it doesn't have to be the first time you see it. It could be the second time, and well, it could be the third time. It doesn't matter. If you haven't made the bracha yet, then it's okay to make the bracha when you see the fruit. But the Shulchan Aruch prefers that you make it when you eat the fruit. Now, the simple explanation for all of these opinions is given in the Mishnah Brura. Why does the Shulchan Aruch recommend waiting until you're going to eat the fruit? Misha ein libo sameach b'riato rak ba'achilato lekuli alma mevarech rak ha'achila. Because the whole bracha, beginning to end, what shehechiyanu is all about, beginning to end, is your simcha, simchas halev, with the new fruit. If you experience simchas halev, if you are truly happy when you see the fruit, by all means, make the bracha then. But most people do not experience the simcha of new fruit until they're actually going to eat it. Well, you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu know what's going on in your heart. If you have the simcha when you see the new fruit on the tree, in the market, in someone else's house, feel free to make the bracha. Most people have this experience the simcha when they're going to eat the fruit, and that's when you make the bracha. It all depends on your experience of simcha. Now there's a fundamental question which we have to ask about every bracha that we make. All the brachas from beginning to end fall into two categories. Some brachas are rishus, optional. You can choose to make the bracha, or you can choose to omit it. O chova, there are other brachas which are obligatory. Which category does shehechiyanu fall into? The Mishnah Brura says flat out, Eina ella rishus. This bracha is only optional and not mandatory, not obligatory, not required. And therefore, someone who refrains from the bracha, and we're going to see examples later today of great tzaddikim who refrained from reciting this bracha, well, there's no obligation to do so. After all, I lo mevarech, lo me'anesh. There's no onish, there's no penalty, there's no harm in refraining from the bracha. Making the bracha gives you all kinds of good zchuyot, gives you all kinds of good merit, and therefore, if you want good advice would be, make the bracha. Of course, it's a great thing, but refraining from the bracha is acceptable, perfectly acceptable. That's why the Mishnah Brura says ra'ui. It is fitting. It is seemly. It is correct. It is ra'ui to be careful to say the bracha and not omit it. There's, of course, distance between ra'ui. It is proper to make the bracha, distance between that, and it is required, it is obligatory to make the bracha. Obligatory it is not. It is optional. The Mishnah Brura goes on and explains in the Bir Halacha, after Amru al Birka shehechiyanu shi rishus, even though this bracha is optional, mitzvah livarech. if you do make the bracha, you get a mitzvah. So of course, if you have an opportunity to get a mitzvah, and this is a very inexpensive mitzvah, this is a very cheap one, requiring vanishingly little effort and zero financial outlay. This is a very inexpensive mitzvah to get, and therefore clearly advisable, clearly commendable, all kinds of good things, but not exactly mandatory, not exactly a chiyuv, not exactly required. Let's go one step further. The more Ktsiya, 18th century, Rav Yaakov Emden, lo shayach birkas shehechiyanu safek brachas lahakel. There's a rule which applies to almost all brachas. Almost all brachas are d'Rabbanan. There are only two brachas which are min haTorah. Birkas Hamazon, because we just had in the last parsha about 2 weeks ago about Birkas Hamazon, and Birkas HaTorah that we recite every morning. Those are the only two brachas which have Torah status. All the other brachas, from beginning to end, all the other brachas are d'Rabbanan, have rabbinic status, and the rule regarding the rabbinic brachas, which is just about all of them, the rule regarding rabbinic brachas is safek bracha lahakel. When in doubt, leave out, omit any bracha which is dubious, which is doubtful, if there's any doubt about saying it. After all, you don't want to run the risk of using God's name in vain, and therefore, if there's some doubt about the bracha, skip it. Some people are absent-minded. Not you guys and not me. We, of course, are very mindful and pay exquisite attention to everything we do in our life, and we never slip up. But some people out there, believe it or not, might not remember. Did I make a bracha on this already? I don't remember. Well, if there's some doubt about it, omit the bracha. Don't say the bracha, aside from Birkas Hamazon, after a meal, and Birkas HaTorah. Those are the two. We have to be strict. So that's a rule which applies to the rabbinic brachas. When in doubt, leave out safek brachas lahakel. But that rule does not apply to shehechiyanu. Why? Lefi shebirk bracha zo nitkana al simchas alev. This bracha has to do with simcha, something that you experience internally, something that an experience that only you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu know about. Samech b'hana'ah chadasha balo, someone who experiences simcha from a new fruit, that's the person who is entitled to make the bracha. Amru Razal, Rabbeinu Zichronam Levracha, Chazal said, Asur lechanot me'olam hazeh b'li bracha. Chazal said, one of the reasons that brachas were instituted, there are many reasons why Chazal gave us brachas. Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, even before the period of Chazal, gave us brachas. There are many reasons why we make brachas. One of the reasons that we make brachas before we eat, before we drink, before we have hana'ah, benefit from this world, is because it says in the pasuk, I don't know if you need a pasuk to teach you this, Lashem ha'aretz u'mloah, the world and everything in it belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, but the same pasuk goes on and says, Nasan livnei Adam, that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave this world to mankind. Well, how does possession of the world, how does possession of anything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, how does possession flip from being God's possession to our possession, thereby entitling us to eat it, to derive benefit from. That's the bracha. You make the bracha, and that entitles you to possession. That entitles you to eat the fruit, to drink the drink, whatever the bracha is, and therefore, kachua ikar, since this is the fundamental idea, making a shehechiyanu is part of what entitles you to eat the fruit. And therefore, as far as this bracha is concerned, and this is the only exception, there's room for leniency, permitting you to recite the bracha even in cases of doubt. Is it a new fruit? Is it not a new fruit? I'm not sure. Did I already recite the bracha on this kind of fruit this year or not? I don't remember. If there's some kind of suffix, you can still go ahead and make the bracha. Are you required to? No, we already established that there's no obligation to say the bracha, but you are entitled to make the bracha. And of course, given the opportunity for such an inexpensive and easy mitzvah, so why not grasp the opportunity and make the bracha? Next issue. What comes first? The bracha on the fruit and then shehechiyanu? Or first shehechiyanu and then the bracha on the fruit? Well, what it says in the Halachot Ketanot, Rav Yaakov Haziz, he was one of the great North African rabbis in the 17th century, and this is the opinion which is subsequently embraced by just about all the great subsequent poskim. He writes, well, the question which he's addressing is Iboy Lahu Bracha Pri Shehechiyanu Ezimem Kodem, which bracha comes first? Borei Prietz or shehechiyanu? That's the question. Tshuva, his answer. Mereish Hava Amina, at first, I used to think the Odif Tfeil Hagdim Shehechiyanu. I used to think it's better to say shehechiyanu first. The Birkas Apri, before Borei Prietz. That's what I used to think. Why? Kevan da'afilu achshav im berach shehechiyanu al ariya bilvad lo ifsid. After all, we learned in the Shulchan Aruch that it's proper and correct to make the bracha shehechiyanu when you see the ripe fruit on the tree, when you see it in the market, when you see it in someone else's house, even though you're not going to eat it at all. We saw that it's quite correct to make the bracha even without eating. So I used to think, therefore, the bracha is not really contingent on eating the fruit. Shulchan Aruch taught us it is only a minhag to wait until you're going to eat the fruit. But me'ikar adin, as far as the fundamental halacha is concerned, the bracha of shehechiyanu is not dependent on actually eating it. So make the bracha first, just as people would do if they make the bracha when they see it on the tree, even though it's not even their tree and they're not going to be eating the fruit. Shehechiyanu first. Therefore, mutav shelo lafsik ben birkas apri lachila. Why give an unnecessary why make an unnecessary interruption between borei prietz and eating the fruit? Everyone knows that when you make a bracha on food, everyone knows that when you make a bracha on drinking something, you should not have an interruption. You should not have a hefsek between the bracha and eating the food. You should not have a hefsek between making the bracha and drinking whatever it is you're going to drink. Well, and since in concept the bracha of shehechiyanu is independent of eating, make shehechiyanu first, and it won't be an interruption between the borei prietz and the eating. But that's what I used to think, he said. V'shavti, But then I returned to this issue and thought about it again. V'ra'iti deyesh laktim birkas apri. And now I think it's a good reason to first say Borei Pri Eitz. Kamo shematzina b'lulav v'Chanukah. After all, when we take the lulav the first time on the first day of Sukkot, or when we light Hanukkah candles the first night, the first Hanukkah candle, what do? Anu mevachim techila, birkas mitzvah. We make the bracha on the mitzvah first. Asher kiddushanu mitzvah sav vitzivanu al natilas lulav vitzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. We first make the bracha on the mitzvah, and then we say shehechiyanu. Wow, if that's what we're doing for lulav, and if that's what we're doing for ner Hanukkah, then hochi adif, then that must be the better thing to do when you're making shehechiyanu on fruit. First, the bracha on the fruit, and then shehechiyanu. Bottom line, there are good arguments for both orders. There are good arguments for first making shehechiyanu and then borei pri eitz. Good arguments for doing it the reverse order, first borei pri eitz and then shehechiyanu. And you will not be surprised to hear that actual practices out there are divided. There are many people who are following this order. There are many other people who are following that order. Both are fine. Okay? If you do not have a minhag one way or another, and if you would ask which is the preferable way, if you don't have a minhag one way or another, there's a tiny, tiny preference to first making the borei pri eitz, but it's really not a strong preference. Even someone who usually says the shehechiyanu first and forgot it, and then remembered the shehechiyanu between borei pri eitz and eating, there are no objection to saying it at that time. Both orders are fine. Let's continue with this idea, exactly the same idea. The Halachas Ketanos gave us the reasons for both orders. The Mishnah Brura says, "L'chatchila nachon levarech shehechiyanu kodem v'achar kach yivarech bracha ru'ya." Shlomo says it's correct to make the shehechiyanu first. B'diavad im ber shehechiyanu achar bracha, but if you made the borei pri eitz first and then shehechiyanu, all is well. So you see that the Mishnah Brura is preferring shehechiyanu first. But the Mishnah Brura contradicts himself because he says this in Siman Reish Kaf Hey. All the way back in Siman Kaf Bet, the Mishnah Brura contradicts himself. And he says, first, you make the bracha on the mitzvah, and there he's talking about lis hatef betzitzis, v'achar kach shehechiyanu, and after you make the bracha shehechiyanu. Mishnah Brura, in two different passages, prefers two different orders. The Mishnah Brura himself apparently changed his mind between Siman Kaf Beis and Siman Reish Kaf Hey because he reversed the order between those two simanim. Well, we see clear evidence that the order really doesn't matter. Okay, up until this point, we've discussed the details. Now, let's get to the important questions. What kind of fruit calls for the bracha? When do you actually make this bracha? What kind of fruit? And let's see. Let's let the sources speak for themselves. The Maharshag wrote as follows: Hine, yadati v'shamati. I heard from the Beis Yitzchak. The Beis Yitzchak told me that the tzaddik of Judikov, one of the great Hasidic leaders, lo haya mivarech shehechiyanu al shum pri chadash. The great Rebbe never made shehechiyanu except on grapes. Grapes. When the grape season came, that was the only fruit he made shehechiyanu on. Now let's think about it for a moment. Why did the Jidikofer Rebbe make shehechiyanu only on grapes and no other fruit? I think the answer is sort of obvious. He didn't experience great simcha on other fruits. Grapes. He experienced great internal simcha, and therefore he made the bracha on grapes. Lachein, therefore, Yafeh katav b'Sha'arei Tshuva b'Shem Agon Makul Rab Tzemach, and therefore the opinion of the great Makubal, the great mystic Rav Tzemach, which is quoted in all the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. What happened with this great Kabbalist Rav Tzemach? Hifziru b'Rabbi Chaim Vital le'achol pri chadash. In Tzvat, they brought a new fruit. We don't even mention what kind of fruit it is, but they brought this new fruit to Reb Chaim Vital, one of the all-time greatest Mekubalim. They brought him this new fruit, expecting to hear him make the bracha shehechiyanu. What did he do? Achal b'lo bracha bika shehechiyanu. He made a boy pre-eitz and ate it without a shehechiyanu at all. Well, why did he omit the shehechiyanu? Adinimo. He must have been correct. Ki bika shehechiyanu irak rishus. After all, this bracha is only optional and not required, and therefore we surely cannot object to Reb Chaim Vital, one of the greatest all-time Mekubalim, skipping shehechiyanu altogether, and we surely cannot object, and we understand why the Jidikofer Rebbe made shehechiyanu only on grapes and no other fruit. V'chein asiti af ani pamachat. Well, once I did this myself, the Maharshag says. Hifziru bi lechol pri chadash. Once they brought me a new fruit as a gift, expecting to hear me say the bracha shehechiyanu. Achalti below, because shehechiyanu. I ate the fruit, but I did not make a shehechiyanu. Well, we understand what's going on here. After all, the bracha depends on Simchas Alev, which you might or might not experience. And even if you do experience Simchas Alev, the bracha is optional and not required. Well, here we have examples of the greatest Hasidic and the greatest mystics refraining, partially or altogether, refraining from making the bracha shehechiyanu. I could bring more sources. I could bring you the sources of the Hasidic Rebbes who make the bracha shehechiyanu only on the seven fruits of Eretz Yisrael, but not on other fruits. The examples go on and on. But you got the basic idea that since the bracha is optional, and since it depends on Simchas Alev, there's room for omitting it. The Shevet HaLevi, Rav Vosner, the great Hasidic posek of Bnei Brak, Nishma ben Achayim shayu gedolim v'tovim shelo berchu ela al shivas aminim. We know that there are gedolei Torah. He wrote this in the 20th century, in the middle of the 20th century. We know that there are the great Torah giants. We know that there are gedolei Torah who make shehechiyanu only on the seven fruits of Eretz Yisrael. Agam ke'ela rak al peres ilan. Some make the bracha only on fruit of the tree and not vegetables. V'hainu destama zaya simchas libam. it all depends on where you experience and when you experience simcha. Avol minim. Afal pishem ikadin al kulam mevarchim. Even though the bracha shehechiyanu is intended for all new fruits and vegetables, well, we understand why these Gedolei Torah omit it in many, if not all cases, because they don't experience simchas halev. Uvetanai shesamach belibo eno mishata atzmo. And of course, you don't want to deceive yourself. You don't want to fool yourself thinking, oh, I must be experiencing simcha and therefore I'll make the bracha. If the simcha is not genuine, skip the bracha and don't deceive yourself. Don't fool yourself. Don't make yourself imagine that you're experiencing the simcha of the new fruit if you are not. If you're making the bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought you to this time of simcha, you should make the bracha only if you experience the simcha. All this has to do with shehechiyanu, which is the optional bracha. Reshus netuna rak al tanai shesamach v'neineh. The option of reciting this bracha, the permission that we have to recite this bracha is applicable, applies only if you actually experience the simcha. Other brachas are mandatory. Other brachas are obligatory. You have to make the brachas before you eat, before you drink. But this, if you wish, you can make the bracha shehechiyanu with the condition that you experience the simcha. Im kain, yesh heter l'shabeach afilu derech bracha. If you experience the simcha for a new fruit, you have permission to be mishabeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to praise God with the bracha. And of course, as I've said, given the opportunity for this inexpensive mitzvah, why not do it? Now, we have clearly in mind that the bracha is optional, not required, and we have clearly in mind that the bracha is valid if you experience the simcha. But we also know that we require the fruits to be fully ripe. We also know that if you experience the simcha when you see the fruit, even if you're not going to eat it, because it's on someone else's tree or in someone else's house or in the market, if you experience the simcha when you see the fruit, it's correct to make the bracha then if you wish. Now, which fruits exactly call for the bracha? Let's see what the Shulchan Aruch says. Im berach shehechiyanu, if you made the bracha shehechiyanu al shirzas. What a shirzas? Shirzas, well, that's just the medieval Spanish word for a cherry. That's a medieval Spanish word for a cherry. How fortunate that I know medieval Spanish and can translate it for you. Well, if you already made the bracha on a cherry, then later, kishayochal gindis, then later, when you're going to eat gindis, a sour cherry, some cherries are sweet when they're ripe, other cherries are sour even when they are ripe. If you made the bracha on a sweet cherry, and later you're going to eat a sour cherry, chozer u'mevarech, you make another bracha on the sour cherry. Two different kinds of cherries. The Ramah adds, hem kishnei midin. It's like two kinds of berries. Same rule with two kinds of berries. Kagon, vinchel, just like vinchel. Vinchel in Yiddish is also a kind of cherry, and kirshen is another kind of cherry. Two different kinds of cherry. The Latin names of these two different kinds of cherry tell you that they're very similar, Prunus caesaris and Prunus avium, two different kinds of cherries, but then they look a little bit different and they taste a little bit different. They are two different kinds of cherries. Each one, if you experience simcha with each one individually, each one can get a bracha of shehechiyanu. Well, the same thing applies to two different kinds of apples, a red apple and a yellow apple. Well, make a list as long as you like of variations, two different kinds of a certain fruit. It looks a little different, tastes a little different. Well, if it's two different kinds of the same fruit, each kind can have a bracha of shehechiyanu if you experience the simcha. The Mishnah Brura says, Kishiyachal gindis, Mishnah Brura says, when you're eating the gindis, that's the sour cherry. Rotzelomar af al pi shekulam nichnasim tachat sug min echad, even though cherries are cherries and sweet cherries and sour cherries are basically the same thing, nonetheless, kishnei minim hem le'inyan birkas kishtei smachasu, since this bracha depends upon simcha. Well, if you experience simcha because you're having a different variety, a different kind of grape. First you had red grapes, now you're having green grapes. If you experience the simcha again, then the bracha is correct again. The Mishnah Brura says, take a look in the Mefarshim. Take a look at the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, which wrote, Afilu im ein chalukim b'shmam, im chalukim b'ta'amam, even if they have the same name, even if two fruits have the same name, these are called apples, and those are called apples. But this is a sweet apple. This is a more sour apple. Even though they have exactly the same name, if you experience the simcha again, like te'enim levanim, te'enim shcharim, like some of the te'enim, some of the figs come from the tree lighter color. Some of the figs come from the tree a darker color. Well, if you experience a simcha, when you get the new color in, and all it is a little bit different color, that's all it is, but you experience the simcha, well, if you have the simcha, then it counts as two different kinds, and each simcha event can have a bracha of shehechiyanu. Tzarich levarech al kol echad shehechiyanu. Each gets a shehechiyanu. Kishe'ein ba'im lefanav b'vasar. This, of course, depends. It depends on them not being eaten at the same time. If you have in front of you a plate of sour cherries and sweet cherries both at the same time, one after another, then a single shehechiyanu will cover both. If you have a salad with red apples and yellow apples in the salad, you're eating both at the same time, then a single shehechiyanu will cover both. V'chein shnei mini agasim, tapuchim, eguzim, doesn't matter whether we're talking about two kinds of pears, two kinds of apples, two kinds of nuts. Gam kein tzarich levarech al kol echad shehechiyanu, the almonds, the walnuts, every kind of fruit. If you experience the simcha, then you make the bracha. B'bira gra mefakpek b'zeh. Up until now, we formulated the halacha according to the mainstream poskim. It's okay to repeat the bracha when you have minor variations in the fruit. Different color, slightly different taste, maybe even a different shape, minor variations in the fruit permit repetition of the bracha shehechiyanu if you experience the simcha. That's the mainstream view. Now, the Mishnah Brura refers now to the opinion of the Gra, the Gaon Mevilna. He pushes all this aside. implying sheda'ato kevan shebe'etzem hu min echad dai shemavech pa'am rishona. According to the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, minor variations don't count. All apples are apples. All grapes are grapes. All figs are figs. And it doesn't matter how big the variations are. If you've made a shehechiyanu on some kind of apple, then that covers all variations of apples subsequently. Now, here we have the mainstream opinion, which is quite happy with repeating shehechiyanu on minor variations of the fruit against the opinion of the Gra. Now, it's quite clear from the structure, it's quite clear from the formulation of the Mishnah Brura which opinion he prefers. The more general one, the mainstream opinion, repeating the shehechiyanu for every new variation, that's quoted in the name of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. That's what all the mainstream poskim hold. There's this one great authority, the Gra, who says, no, variations don't count. And once you've made a shehechiyanu on any kind of grape, that covers all variations in grapes. Well, bottom line, what should we tell someone who asks? Someone who asks what to do. Of course, if you experience the simcha on a new variety of apple, a new variety of grape, of course you have rishus. Of course you are permitted to repeat the bracha. On the other hand, those who refrain, well, no one said you're obligated to say the bracha in the first place. It was always only optional. And therefore, those who refrain, because the Gra was of the opinion that the shehechiyanu should not be repeated, well, there's absolutely no room to object to those who are on the strict side of this issue and refrain from making the bracha because they want to avoid using God's name in vain. And he quotes the Mora K'tzir, whom we saw before, who in turn quotes his father, the Hocham Tzvi, the great Rav of the Sephardi community in Amsterdam in the late 17th, early 18th century, that he held, like the Gra, not to make brachas on variations of fruit. Amnam levasov mitzaded, the dafsha bemet l'sharian yam nikra min achad b'kol makom, but the Mora K'tzir, even though his father, the great Rav of Amsterdam, who was a contemporary of the Gra, contemporary of the Gaon of Vilna, refrained from making brachas on variations, the son, the Mora K'tzir, did make the bracha on every new variation. Bottom line, what do we have up to this point? We know the bracha is optional. We know that the bracha depends upon whether you experience Simchas Alev. We know that according to the mainstream poskim, if you experience Simchas Alev, internal joy, on variation, a different kind of grape, first red grapes and then you grow green grapes, first yellow apples and then red apples or whatever, there's absolutely no objection in repeating the bracha. You're not required to do so. No objection. And those who wish to omit the bracha, well, we already saw the great rabbis who always omitted the bracha, or who almost always omitted the bracha, aside from a few special situations where they really did experience simcha. As far as the correct order of bracha is concerned, well, as we've seen, that's totally up in the air. Both approaches make perfect sense. First shehechiyanu, and then Bori Praetz, or the other way around. Now, the Sephardic poskim, led by the Or L'Tzion. Or L'Tzion was Rabben Zion Abba Shaul, the great Rosh Yeshiva of Porat Yosef here in Yerushalayim. He was asked, someone who makes the bracha on dark-colored figs or dark-colored grapes, is it correct to repeat the bracha on light-colored figs or light-colored grapes? Answer. Ta'anim u'anavim shchorim levanim min echad. The variations do not count. Green grapes, red grapes, that's min echad, that's one type of grape, and therefore, if you already made the bracha, you shouldn't repeat it. Makom makom nira sheperot hadav. But as far as citrus fruits are concerned, even though all the citrus fruits are similar, there's similarity between lemons, limes, oranges, clementino. What are they called in English? Clementino? I don't know. The grapefruit. Well, you know as well as I do what the citrus fruits are. They're also all sort of similar, but they do have different names. They do have different tastes. Anyone blindfolded can tell you whether it's a grapefruit or an orange. Therefore, they deserve separate shehechiyanu if you experience the simcha. And I say once again, although all the examples we've had up till now are Borei Pri Etz examples, exactly the same rules apply to Borei Pri Adama examples if you would experience them. I remember not so long ago when I first came to Israel, tomatoes were available only in the summer. There simply were no tomatoes. The first tomatoes that came on the market in the summer were from Kibbutz Sde Boker in the Negev. They always had the first tomatoes, and they were crazy expensive. You had to wait a week or two until there were other suppliers of tomatoes, and the price went down. Oh, but when the first tomatoes came on the market in the summer, most of us experienced great simcha. And of course, shehechiyanu is not only an issue of Borei Pri Etz. The same rules apply to Borei Pri Adama, except most Borei Pri Adama nowadays, potatoes, tomatoes, carrots, well, you name it. But Borei Pri Adama stuff is usually available all year long nowadays and no longer seasonal. The truth is that outside of Israel, if you live in Europe or North America, most fruits are available all year long because they get imported from different places, and therefore there's no seasonality there at all. But in Israel, we still do have seasonality on Borei Pri Etz, and there might be an example of seasonality for Borei Pri Adama as well, but I don't know of any specific example. Let's finish with the Dovei Misharim. The Dovei Misharim was Rav Weidenfeld was his name. He was the Chabina Rav in Europe before the Holocaust. He was the leading Hasidic posek. He survived the Holocaust, came to Yerushalayim, where he founded the Yeshiva Kochav Miyakov, which today is, if not the leading, surely one of the leading Hasidic yeshivas here in Eretz Yisrael. He wrote, Efshar lachzor levarech shehechiyanu shenit al shinui shem. If there's a difference in the name of the fruit, different apples have different name, a Macintosh and a delicious apple, they have different names. If there's a different name, it's correct to make another bracha. Shinui tzeva. If it's only a difference in color, that's enough to make another shehechiyanu. Le'inyan birka shehechiyanu tolui b'hargasha. Whether or not you make the bracha of shehechiyanu depends upon what you feel. It depends upon what you experience. And if a different color in the fruit is enough to engender a sense of simcha in your heart, by all means, go for it and make the brach shehechiyanu. Kevan sheyesh nitchadesh lo simcha al yedei min zeh, if it just looks different, and that's enough to create simcha, by all means, make the bracha. After all, we already learned that according to the Shulchan Aruch, Me'ikar Hadin, the bracha is correctly recited upon seeing the fruit on the tree, or seeing the fruit in the market, or seeing the fruit in someone else's house, even if you're not going to be eating it at all at the moment. If you enjoy seeing it, the bracha is correct. Ledina, bottom line, Kvar hechriu, the Ovid Kamar Ovid, the Ovid Kamar Ovid. Bottom line, as far as shehechiyanu is concerned, the Ovid Kamar, anyone who follows one opinion is fine. The Ovid Kamar, anyone who follows the other opinion is also fine. This is an area which, since it is rooted in Rishus, the option, the permission that Chazal gave us to recite the bracha, well, it's perfectly all right to follow this opinion or that opinion, shehechiyanu first, or Brei Pri'etz first, or repeating the bracha with two different colors of apples, or refraining from the bracha altogether, or refraining from the bracha aside from some special fruits that really give you special simcha. All the opinions are equally acceptable, and you can follow whichever one you want. The Prima Gadim says, Heichedu mamish min echad betam echad rak shechiloko b'mara yesh l'ma'et sfekas. There are opinions who say refrain from repeating the bracha. There are those who say it's fine to repeat the bracha, and you're free to choose either opinion. Okay, those are the basic sources regarding shehechiyanu on seasonal fruits and vegetables, if there are such. I'm going to pause with this and ask you whether you have any questions that you want to pose now. Any questions today? Yes. Is that Rivka?
Yes.
Yes. So I still didn't get it. It has to be shehechiyanu, we say, the new fruit that is new to me, or new fruit on the market.
If you experience simcha, say the bracha.
Regardless, even if it's a dried fruit from 10 years ago and I'm happy to see it now, suddenly I say the shehechiyanu.
By all means, you're permitted to say the bracha. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else today? Good. Then we're going to pause with this. I wish you a good week and a safe week. And,
Amen.
And a Shabbat Shalom. And look forward to seeing you all in the continuation of the Yeshiva next week. Until then.
Thank you.
Shalom.
About new clothes and new other things that we say shehechiyanu, right?
Oh, okay. Next week we'll do new clothing and new objects. Buy a new air conditioner,
Maybe.
a new automobile. We'll deal with that next.
A piece of jewelry or something.
Yeah. Okay. Next week we'll
Rabbi,
deal with things.
Rabbi,
Yes, Nechama. Yes.
no, it wasn't me. It's Kayasara.
Oh, Chayasara. Okay.
hi.
Chayasara.
Thank you, Rav, so much. It was really enlightening. I heard that if you have two species of the same fruit, one shehechiyanu covers it all. If you have more than one species on the table, are we saying more than one shehechiyanu? I'm sorry, I didn't.
If you're eating them in the same session, one shehechiyanu covers all of them. But if you're going to eat it in a separate session, even though it's on the table now, if you're going to eat it in a separate session, you can repeat the shehechiyanu.
Okay, so for Tu B'Shvat, would it be better than not to have all the new fruits on the table, so we could like have it not on the table and then say another bracha, or is it all going to be?
I prefer to have them all on the table and one shehechiyanu for all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Rabbi, do you record your shiur?
Yes, I do. This shiur is recorded, and
Which
you can. The question is how to get the recording. That's a good question. How to get the recording?
Yael Dworkin.
Yael Dworkin. Yael Dworkin she's in charge of the recordings, and she can supply you with the recording.
And how do I get in touch with her?
Do we have her Yael's email address? Anyone have her email address?
Would
Or
you
her
be
phone
able to
number?
would you be able to take my email address down? I'm not quite so tech savvy.
Yeah, I'm also not. One moment. Okay.
Here, I'll do it. I'll do it. Just tell me what it is right now. Hold on a minute.
EVELIN.
Wait a second. E
V
V
E L
E L Y N Evelyn
dot
dot
Peretz PERETS for Sydney
okay
at Big Pond
okay
.com.
very good.
I'd like the Rabbi Shiur every week, please.
Okay, my pleasure. And,
Okay.
and Nechama,
Okay,
thank you.
I'm
Nechama,
sending
thank
it
you
to
very
Yael
much.
right now.
Thank you
Not
very
a
much,
problem.
Nechama, for taking care of that. Okay.
Thank you. I have a good week. Shabbat shalom
You
to
too,
you.
and a safe week to everyone.
Yod
Thank you
Sadi-
so much.
on
Enjoy all the fruit in the world.
Nachon Mohod.
yes. Be well.
Good night.
Also, good Shabbos.
Good
Good night.
Shabbos.
So thank you. I made the choice last week I'd already made a shehechiyanu on Bing cherries, and but there were all of a sudden there were Queen Anne cherries. And had I known I could have made the bracha just for seeing them, I would have made the bracha right there in the shul because they're my favorite.
Okay.
But I did make a second shehechiyanu, and I
Excellent.
wasn't 100% sure I was right. So thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Excellent.
Sure, because now I know. But like mamash, I love both kinds of cherries. But um what about things that I mean, like I know Rivka asked about dried fruits, but like there's a certain brand, it's also cherries, by the way. There's a certain brand um of canned, or it's actually in a glass, but anyway, preserved cherries in a syrup that I also like very much. That gives me great simcha and I don't buy it more than like once a year. I usually buy it around Pesach time, whatever, but I don't buy it. It's not always available. So is that also something then that when that
Yes.
shows up and I see it, I can also make a bracha? Okay.
Absolutely.
Even though it's not
You
fresh
can.
fruit.
Absolutely, you can.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be well.
Okay.
B'atzlacha. Shalom.
Hatzlacha. Yeah. Shabbat shalom. Bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Figure out how to do you want us to do.